Hi, this is my review of Lions and Tigers and Owlbears, the 13th Age Bestiary 2. This book surprised me quite a bit in terms of variety. It contains creatures and beasts that can be used in any campaign setting. There are also some that are quite useful if you are planning to play the 13th Age in Glorantha in that campaign setting. But it also contains some very specific monsters. Some of them are perfect for themes of horror, for hellish themes as well. Some of them are funny, some of them are just plain weird. Some of them have a mythos flavor to them. And the book also contains lots of advice and tips on how to use these creatures and also how to handle different themes. You also have a lot of setting information, but remember that the 13th Age is not set in stone. You can customize your experience however you like. So all of this information, even though it's perfect to use it in the Dragon Empire setting, you could also apply it to any campaign setting that you like. Now, let's talk about the quality of this book. Without a doubt, the 13th Age books are the highest in quality when it comes to role-playing games. I own a few of the books, and throughout the years, they have surprised me with their sturdiness. A lot of them seem completely new, and I have paged through them several times, and the pages are still in place, and the hardcover protects the book so well. The graphic design is amazing as well. I love the colors that they use, and the illustrations top notch. They perfectly represent any sort of creature or encounter or scene imaginable as detailed in the books. It's also quite easy to read through the different rules and information. It's so easy on the eyes, the spacing of the letters is awesome. So this is the highest that I have in quality when it comes to role-playing game books. And you guys know that I love several of my books, for example the Hackmaster books, but 13th Age it's the best that I have when it comes to quality in role-playing game books. The organization is great, the table of contents, the tables and appendixes at the end of the book. This book is simply flawless, and I couldn't find any typos or errors. It's just pretty amazing. Definitely the highest in terms of quality. Let's talk about the contents. First, the book starts with an introduction on how to use the contents, the different sections. There are some very interesting creatures, some that could be considered major players or perhaps decadent figureheads of powers and portfolios in the past of any campaign setting, because you're going to have former iconic antagonists. That's right, you have 3 icons of the past that are now enemies, that have fallen from grace, so to speak. I think that the key to the variety in this bestiary is that the ideas were taken from 16 game designers and 6 artists, so that's pretty impressive. So you have a lot of enemies, but also potential patrons or even allies. Some of the material contained here is taken from additional material of the 13th Age monthly. So you will find some of that material expanded or elaborated upon, but also noticed a few things missing from some of that material. Because, for example, when it comes to the Temples of the Frog Folk material, the information is expanded, if I'm not mistaken, in this Bestiary 2. However, I didn't find information on how to create Frog Folk player characters. That's contained in the 13th Age monthly PDF. And when it comes to the Chroma Dragonics, all of the information, and I think a bit more, is in this Bestiary 2. So while I haven't gotten into all of the 13th Age monthly material. I have seen some of the documents. I own the Chroma Dragonics, Temples of the Folk, etc. So I can tell you that that information or that content is worth having. In fact, I'm going to put a link in the description below to my review of Chroma Dragonics. But if you are not sure exactly what content you can expect in this Bestiary 2, I'm going to name some of the content, if not all of the content. So in this Bestiary we have information concerning the Temples of the Frogfolk, the Eidelons, summoning spells, the 7-icon campaign, Chroma Dragonics, Echo and Gauntlet, the Waking Stones, Rakshasas and Rivers, the Phoenix, Sorcerer Summoning, Coin Tricks, Temple of the Sun Cabal, Shades of Fae, Mounted Combat, Nymphs, and High Druid's World. I am not familiar with all of the content of all of those PDFs, but you can expect that you will find some of the information or even expanded information, so keep that in mind. This Bestiary goes into great detail on how you can use some of the different monstrous cultures. You have a lot of information concerning the fire giants, for example, but there's also information on creatures of the Fae. So if you want to play like a very specific campaign, you can have different naiads and sprites, but they do not have to be linked to more nature-themed icons like the High Druid or the Elf Queen. You also have information on how to relate those different fake creatures to the Crusader, the Diabolist, the Great Gold Worm, even the Orc Lord. So there are many ways in which you can modify thematically and even mechanically the different monsters here to fit a particular icon's agenda or theme. And there are a lot of monsters that you could use in a campaign in Hell. If you want to play sort of like a Paladin in Hell type of affair, you have a lot of monsters to help you do that. You also have some new monsters, even some that add a new condition, which is the shocked condition. So this is basically getting mentally shaken by something, so you make rolls at a disadvantage. There's also a new monster type, which is the spirit type of monster, because this isn't exactly an undead type of enemy. This is more of an energy-based entity, and to attack that entity, you need to use your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. So this is a good balancing factor. So barbarians and fighters and whatnot could have to consider putting some points on charisma or wisdom or intelligence. If they are too reliant on some other types of attributes or ability scores, they will have to put some points into intelligence, wisdom, or charisma to have a chance against these spirit type of creatures. I like it that throughout the book there are different sidebars and text boxes that give you tips and advice on how to use all of these creatures and fit them into any campaign, any plotline. You also have information on elite and weakling monsters. You can have tables to have some balanced encounters with that. Now let's take a look at some of the monsters in this Bestiary. First we have the Battle Shade. The Battle Shade feels a bit like an undead that is the embodiment of a ruinous battlefield. This is an entity that attacks with the rage and the sadness of a battlefield. There are different types of shades. So you have broken shades, bloody shades, blade shade, slaughter pit shade. These are great to use in any sort of terrifying place where some type of killing or butchering has been carried out. This represents the rage and the anguish of the victims in those places, and they are quite versatile on how you can use them, because a lot of them, as expected, deal a lot of damage, but some have a very interesting way of moving around the battlefield. They can basically fuse or melt into the ground and appear nearby in a different place. So this is going to be somewhat of a concern or a preoccupation for the casters of the group. They never know when one of these shades is going to do that, and suddenly they are fighting close quarters combat with these terrifying representations of battlefields. And all of these monsters contain information related to battlefield effects, how to build battles, how to use them against player characters, and even adventure hooks and how they are related to different icons. And then we have the Bonded. Now, this is basically a character that used magical items too much. As you may remember from the 13th Age, there are some complications if you have a lot of powerful magical items, weapons and armor, etc. on your person. Too many magical rings, necklaces. You may actually become one with the item. When it comes to the Bonded, the magical object takes control of your personality, and suddenly you're just a host, a vehicle to the will of these mysterious objects. So you have different types such as the Bonded Hero, Bonded Veil, Bonded Hex Knight, Bonded Arcane Archer, and of course all of those have abilities related to the type of magic that they are being possessed by, rather the magic object that is controlling them. So if someone is controlled by some sort of staff or book, you can expect a lot of different spells and magical abilities. But if it's more related to a weapon or armor, that's going to be more melee oriented. You also have some really cool adventure hooks. So maybe you find a group of adventurers that have been completely controlled by some magical objects and they are on some sort of quest. If this quest goes against the objectives of the player characters, they're going to be enemies. But maybe it has to do with your particular search for something. They could actually be allies. Despite the bizarre nature of the alliance. Next we have the Bone Imp. There are many myths and legends around how these creatures came to be. And you have all of them here. Maybe they're actually baby demons. Maybe demons are born without organs and flesh and muscle. They're just bone, and as they grow older, they start manifesting those additional parts of their bodies. Or maybe they were created as slaves, or were just always kind of there, but somewhat hidden. Bone imps can potentially be the bane of spellcasters because they can actually eat magic. Then we have the Briar Elves. Now Briar Elves have a bit of an ominous, even apocalyptic feel to them. If you wanted to build like a campaign with a major threat, the Briar Elves are perfect for that. They are the reason why the other types of elves do not fight too much against each other or do not go into all-out war. Because the Briar Elves are this threat, this looming catastrophe waiting to happen. Some say that they were just like a myth or a fairy tale, no pun intended, but the Briar Elves are still there watching, and they are quite deadly. They even have some tips on how all of the encounters concerning the Briar Elves are going to be unbalanced against the player characters. They have servants made out of, for example, barbed vines and briar trees. They have many cursed objects. They are so evil and mysterious that they cannot be taken as a race for the player characters. And you also have signs of the return of the Briar Elves. And this one is probably one of my favorite monsters in this book. This is the Coin Zombie. You know how some player characters, they know that zombies are not very bright and slow, so they attack them at a safe distance using projectiles, crossbow bolts, throwing axes and such. But coin zombies, they are kind of like piñatas. So when you cut them or break any part of their bodies, coins start to pour out of that wound. And you would say, well, an adventurer is going to be too dumb to just not realize that that's a trap, trying to lure you close to the zombie. But these coins have a bit of like an entrancing effect. So they actually force player characters that fail their role. They get drawn towards the coins within the reach of the zombies. So they are quite nasty, especially in situations when you have like many innocent non-player characters. And they could get killed if the coin zombie enters a village. There are going to be a lot of bystanders that could be drawn towards the zombies, as the player characters are constantly stabbing and hacking and slashing the zombies. And then we have the Darrow. I really like this illustration. It reflects the insane nature of the Darrow. They have some variations when compared to the Darrow as presented in the core rulebook of the 13th Age. And here you have different types of Darrow: the Berserkers, Whispers, Seers. You have information on the origin of the Darrow as well, and how they relate to the other icons. And then we have the Ebon Gauntlet. This bestiary contains different factions. So we wanted to build a campaign around the plans and maneuvering of a certain faction. There are several examples here that you can use. They could be like the MacGuffin or the center or the framework of an entire campaign. So the Ebon Gauntlet serves the Crusader. They are kind of like the special ops team of the Crusader. So you have a description of the different types of members of the Ebon Gauntlet. Many of them are skilled in melee and physical combat, but a lot of them are also more magically inclined, so to speak. And they all have that like Inquisitor type of feel to them, combined with Special Agent. Then we have the Eidelons. They aren't exactly normal spirits. They are concepts. They are embodiments of ideas. Well, as embodied as you can get in an ethereal sense, I guess you could say. And they are quite impossible to defeat. You have the number of times that you have to defeat them, to vanquish them or banish them completely. It's not going to be easy, and they could be a recurring thing that could happen throughout the campaign, like an enemy that constantly pops out. And sometimes these Eidolons act according to their the ideas that represents the constitution of an Eidolon. Some you will find Eidolons of war. Some Eidolons are guardians. Some are related directly to the icons, and some could be like putting the player characters to the test, seeing if they are worthy of the idea that a particular Eidolon represents. You can have information on the blessings and curses of the Eidolons. Maybe some Eidolons are in harmony with what the player characters are doing, and they actually help the player characters, but there will also be curses when you are an antagonist against the Eidolon's core concept. Then we have the elemental beasts. This is when an elemental power fuses with a normal animal, making it extraordinary and granting it certain qualities related to the different elements of nature. So you will find powers of air, of earth, of fire, and water. And all of these different beasts are going to do things related to a particular element. So for example, those related to the powers of air are going to be able to fly, they will create swirling winds and dust devils. Some others related to the powers of earth, it could be quite resistant, quite sturdy. They could even have skin of stone, and they could cause rock slides. Those related to the powers of fire could have a burning breath, and they will be highly resistant against fire or heat-based attacks. And those related to the powers of water are going to be in tune with cold and acid. They could create torrents, they could flow like water. They could splash back, getting a bonus to all attack rolls against creatures that attacked it during the last round. So you can take any animal and turn it into an elemental beast. Then you have information on the fawns. It is advised that you introduce fawns into a campaign to add an element of mystery and surprise, not to handle them as something that was always there in the setting, but rather perhaps a bit like harbingers of something else. Fawns usually engage in two paths when it comes to combat. They usually follow the path of the sword, with abilities related to physical combat or more conventional means, but they also have the path of the song, which is more a bit more on the support role and more magical. And then you have the Fae. Now remember that all of these fairy-like creatures have information on how you can link them to a particular icon or to tailor them to suit the campaign. Maybe it just works around 3 or 4 of the icons, so that they do not feel too much out of place if one of those icons is not on the Sylvan or Forest side of things. The Fae category feels a bit like a catch-all of the different creatures and entities in folklore, and you have different origin myths concerning the Fae. Maybe some of them are magic made flesh. Maybe others represent the left hand of the dark gods. So any creature that you have seen in folklore, like sprites and great hounds and pixies and spriggans, you will find them all here with the different abilities to deal physical or magical damage. You also have information on their culture and adventure hooks. And then we have the fire giants, and I like this section quite a bit. These fire giants feel like the central element of a campaign. All about their society, all about their beliefs, and how they consider the other inhabitants of the world. It's all detailed right here. They have a bit of a monastic flavor to them. You will see fire giants that are holy warriors and combating alongside their forge wolves. You will also find smiths and giant priests. I think this is the best treatment that I have seen given to fire giants in a bestiary of a fantasy role-playing game. Next are the Flux Elementals. These feel like sentient elementals, not so narrow-minded or as alien as some outsiders may appear. They have their own agendas, their own purposes, and when you fight them, you're not facing off against just one element. You're going to feel how they flow in terms of abilities, that they are sometimes attacking you with a rocky fist, or maybe using their scorching hands, or maybe their wind touch. You never know what they are going to employ in battle. And then we have the Fomori. Again, we have seen them in folklore, specifically in Celtic folklore. They have a slight feel of impending doom or apocalypse. As in the Old Gods Return, you could say that they are somewhat Lovecraftian. So these Fomori are perfect to be used as part of some sort of prophecy or omen. You have different types such as the Unclean Ones and the True Fomori and the Fomorians, each with different abilities such as Uncanny Speed, Unholy Regeneration, Unnatural Strength. So they are perfect for that type of campaign, where you know that this threat is looming over the entire, perhaps, Dragon Empire. You could have a campaign around the different houses of the Fomori. That feels slightly on the Dark Elves side of things, but the main difference is that these Fomori are so powerful and alien in comparison, and the ways in which they can attack and present themselves. Some Fomori will actually look really beautiful, and some others are going to look disgusting, hideous. You even have a section here giving you some tips and advice on how to handle horror, because these Fomori, because they are so grotesque in both their bodies and you could say their minds, some groups can find them too terrifying, and some others, of course, will find them too awesome. And then we have the Forest That Walks. This is a fallen icon. In the past, maybe it was a former High Druid, and maybe it was cursed by the Elf Queen. Or maybe this former High Druid was murdered by some icon of the past. So nonetheless, this creature is now a very powerful aberration. It's a level 14th spoiler. So you could have a campaigns featuring this Forest That Walks, that wants to destroy all of the civilizations. And you have all of the details when it comes to a campaign of the different triumphs that the characters can accomplish, perhaps weakening the Forest That Walks as you achieve certain goals throughout the campaign. You have information on all of the types of followers that could assist this Forest That Walks in its destructive path. So you will need to achieve those campaign victories to have a chance at defeating the Forest That Walks. And then we have the Frog Folk. All of the information of the PDF version of 13th Age Monthly is in the Frog Folk section of this book. In fact, it is actually expanded when it comes to the relationship between the Frog Folk and different temples with some of the icons. However, I did find it strange that the information to create Frog Folk characters is not present here. So if you want that, you will have to homebrew some details concerning that, or you will have to buy the PDF. Nonetheless, this section has been greatly expanded on the culture that you can use while creating adventures and campaigns. You can have a new spell, the Chant of Doom. This is a powerful spell that deals ongoing acid damage. So definitely something to consider, especially if you are getting into the theme of the frog folk. Then we have ghosts. Some could be benign, but some others could have some conflicts with the icons. This actually factors in with the abilities of the ghosts, because for example, maybe there is the ghost of a disgraced legionnaire. So this type of ghost has some connection with the emperor. So if one of the characters has one or more points of relationship with the emperor and misses an attack with a natural odd roll, that character is going to take a penalty to all of its defenses. So you have different types of ghosts, such as hungry mouth ghosts, twisted souls, and they deal different negative energy damage and do all sorts of nasty effects upon the characters related to some type of disgrace or curse or a haunting. And then we have the gibbering mouther. Now this is one of the best illustrations that I have seen of a gibbering mouther, because it steps a bit away from the classic image. Many fantasy role-playing games picture a gibbering mouther as some sort of blob with eyes and mouth, but this one looks a bit more alien, somewhat along the lines of H.R. Geiger in my opinion. So it looks really nice. This type of monster inflicts the shocked condition upon the player character, so they're going to have a hard time making those rolls when they need them and getting a disadvantage because of the gibbering mouther's effect. And you have origins of the gibbering mouther. Maybe it was created as a side effect of some alchemical mixture or potion, or maybe it was a mistake of a wizard king. And then we have another fallen icon, the Gold King. The dwarf king of a previous age led every man, woman and child from under home to a promised greater fortune, deep in the underworld. All perished, but the fallen icon and undead remnants of its greed survived. So this is great as a dwarf villain. You have information on his minions, the glittering bearer, the screaming hordling, the bronze errant. All of them in theme with this icon of the Gold King, this fallen icon. And he's quite powerful. If you actually manage to fight against the Gold King, he's going to be a 13th level spoiler aberration. So as you try to thwart the plans of the Gold King or any sort of situation that arises in the campaign, you could have some triumphs against him and try to diminish his power so that you do not have too much of a hard time when you actually get to fight him directly. And then we have another fallen icon, the Great Ghoul. He's sure to present some sort of strong antagonism or rivalry with the Lich King, because this is another power of undead. He normally has jackals as servitors, sort of like demi-humans with a bestial appearance, but even ordinary ghouls sometimes go to serve the Great Ghoul. So as you can see, he's a bit of a challenge against the reign of the Lich King. And you have all the information on his followers, the Jackal Mage, Jackal Priest, Jackal High Mage, Summon Ghouls, Great Ghoul's Maw. This Great Ghoul's Maw is a manifestation of the Great Ghoul. He attacks through it, even inflicting like a tongue strike or snapping jaws. So you feel like you're fighting a demigod, and you have all the information in a campaign on how you could try to eliminate the Great Ghoul and get some triumphs in our campaign victories as you try to face off against this ancient power of death. Then we have the Hollowed Gargoyle. The Hollowed Gargoyle serves the priestess. These types of beings seem somewhat on the side of good. Perhaps they could be allies, but it depends if your plans or actions go against some of the priestess's wishes or designs. You could be fighting these Hollowed Gargoyles. And you also have some other creatures on that side of things that with a holy sort of feeling, like the Temple Lion. All of that in the category of the Hollowed Gargoyle. Next we have the Hellcat, that is practically invisible in bright light. We also have the Ember Imp. While they look similar to demonic imps, Ember Imps lack the wings and tail of their smarter cousins. We also have the Marsh cult. This faction is perfect if you want to have like a Call of Cthulhu type of campaign. This cult works better in short-term campaigns or just to make an appearance every now and then. They work under the Diabolist, so any characters that are acting against the wishes or designs of the Diabolist are going to get in trouble with the Marsh cult. They look somewhat decayed, sickly. They have this greenish pallor to them because they live in the swamp, in Marsh specifically. Next, we have the Hellstone Gargoyle. The Crusader created these things out of the rocks near conquered hellholes. We also have the Hellwarped Beast. This is basically a mutant that results from the interaction of the hellhole's energy with the outside world. Remember that all of these creatures have different types and abilities and powers, story hooks, anything related to their background, to the ways that you can use them in your games. And then we have the Hydra, with a chaotic flavor to it. This illustration is also quite awesome, very alien, somewhat unnerving. So each head has a different attack. Maybe it's going to attack you with draconic teeth, or maybe it's going to use some sort of breath weapon or a chaotic ray. You also have Cobalts, many types of Cobalts, Cobalt assassins and the tactics that they use, Cobalt berserkers. Each type of Cobalt is related to one of the colors of the 3 dragons of the 13th Age. So as you would expect, the Black Dragon has to do with the Cobalt assassins. Cobalt berserkers fall under the domain of the Red Dragon. There's even a Cobalt cult dedicated to the Great Gold Worm. So you have Golden Demon Warriors, Golden Demon Cultists, Demon Drakes. As you could see, the type of cult that they have towards this icon of great goodness and power is somewhat twisted. It's just amazing the amount of creatures and even classical monsters within this bestiary that have original twists. There are many strange and original creatures, at least when it comes to the 13th version of each of these monsters, but even those that you would easily recognize have their own original twists, so that's really good to create some unexpected adventures. We also have the Koruku. So if you wanted to fight like a kaiju in the Dragon Empire, this is the monster to fight against. Only the Koru behemoths can overpower these beasts in terms of kaiju flavor. And then we have a section detailing the Chroma Dragonics. Remember that I reviewed the Chroma Dragonic 13th Age monthly supplement. So if you haven't seen that review, I'm going to put the link in the description below so you can check it out. I talk about the Chroma Dragonics in a lot more detail there. And in this Bestiary 2, you have all of that information, all of the details on how to create Chroma Dragonic characters, how to use them as enemies, anything related to their abilities, their powers, their culture, everything. I could be mistaken, but I think it's actually expanded a bit more in this Bestiary 2. We also have Malatine, the purple dragon. Now this dragon is very interesting to use because there are many lies and one potential truth on the origins of Malatine. Maybe this dragon is a child of the 3, that is the daughter of the red and the blue dragons. Or maybe this is actually an ascendant enchantress. Or maybe this is the result of an unlikely experiment. Either way, you have all the details to use this purple dragon as a villain, as an ally, as something in between. You also have different tiers to use her in any point in the campaign. That is, you have the adventurer tier, the champion and epic tiers. You have her stats when she is in her human form or when she is in dragon form. She uses a bladed fan when in human form, and she also uses psychic attacks. She can even overwhelm her opponents with the 1000 Delights attack, so the opponent is stuck until the start of the next turn, as their mind is assailed by pleasant images pulled from their own inner fantasies. And in dragon form she is quite brutal, of course, and she also delivers a psychoactive breath, so she deals psychic damage and ongoing psychic damage through it. We have Minotaurs, even Minotaur citizens. We also have Naiads, all of the relevant adventure hooks and the variants of the Naiads, the Melusine and the Nyx. We also have Nymphs, and all the information, as I was telling you at the beginning of this review, to link all of these creatures to different icons. Although it's going to be easier to put them in theme, of course, with the Elf Queen or the High Druid. You also have Owlbears. The classic fantasy monster gets the 13th age treatment, and they are quite savage. They can actually rip off one of your limbs, and you have options on how to handle that situation, because maybe your campaign isn't that gritty, it's a bit more cinematic. Maybe you only lose 2 recoveries, or you take a campaign loss and something bad happens during the campaign, instead of just losing your arm or a leg. You even have a a snowy owlbear cub. Look at it, look at this illustration, it's so cute. And as you can see, and this is somewhat disturbing, the little owlbear cub has already ripped the arm of this snowman. So definitely a very cuddly but potentially lethal threat. That is, do not let that owlbear cub grow into something terrifying. Or maybe you will try to raise it as a pet. Who knows, maybe you could try. You also have information on the phoenix, how they are heralds of royalty and servants of the icons. Different types of phoenix. Maybe you have the flamebird phoenix or the void phoenix. You also have information on different phoenix treasures, such as the phoenix tears or the phoenix cloak, and even information on phoenix eggs. You also have the Rakshasa, of course, these masters of mind games. The Rakshasa, devourer of wizards and delvers and masterminds, surely can attack the player characters directly, but I think the Rakshasa are quite devious and conniving, so it's going to be quite useful to have them in campaigns that have to do with intrigue and manipulation and such. Then we have the Reavers, agents of the Lich King. They are effectively his harvesters. They have some really nasty abilities and powers. They can actually grab your soul, and they inflict a really heavy penalty on your attack. They can also mark you for death. So if they mark you several times, you won't be able to use recoveries during that particular combat. Then we have Salamanders, different types. Blue Flame Salamander, the Doom Lantern Salamander. They're quite powerful. Some of them can actually roar, and their roar will set you on fire. So you will take ongoing fire damage. You also have information on Salamander treasures, such as the Ever-Burning Lantern or the Salamander Leather. We also have the Shadow Mongoose. We also have the Silver Hand Cult, which is basically a sect or cult dedicated to the Lich King. So at first, it may look like a very straightforward divine affair, but they actually serve the Lich King with their Tempters and their Death Knights. This is a great cult, in my opinion, to use in a long campaign. You could also use them in short campaigns or just inserting them at different points. But overall, they are great when you have a campaign where the adventurers are trying to stop the Lich King from spreading his influence. You also have other monsters such as the Spell Golem. You have the Star Masks. They were the stars, no pun intended, of the Star Mask saga. It was an organized play campaign that featured these sort of like parasitic masks, very alien and very powerful, with a scatological presence overall. So you have the different types, like the Star Mask Cult Leader, the Cult Puppet, the Star Mask Brainbuster, and other templates related to the Star Masks. We also have information on Thunder Wraiths, Thunder Lizards, Troglodytes, many different monsters. I'm just giving you a small sample, and it's really great that each of these entries features like 3 or 4 pages, and the ones related to more important creatures, such as for example the fallen icons or the different cults and sects, they have like 8 pages, so it's great to generate some ideas. For an entire campaign or an entire story arc, you have information on the Waking Stones. This is another supplement featured in the 13th Age Monthly. You also have the Zorn. Now the Zorn in other fantasy role-playing games is usually handled as some sort of earth elemental, But here you could use them as true aliens. At the end of the book, you have appendixes on how to turn or change the different monsters, adapt them to the 13th Age in Glorantha. So if you want to play in that campaign setting, it's a book that it's going to come out soon, if I'm not mistaken. You can take, for example, the Battle Shade or the Briar Elf and the Ghost, and you can adapt it to the story and flavor of Glorantha. You also have tables of monsters organized by level and size and role. It's really handy when you're just building encounters and you want to find all of the monsters in a single section. This is going to be quite handy to select the monsters to present appropriate challenges to the player characters. And the last appendix is a couple of tables that are great to factor in weaker or stronger monsters in combat encounters. So what do I think of Lions and Tigers and Owlbears? The 13th Age Bestiary 2. This book is awesome. You must get this book. I would like to say it's just optional, but it's just so great that it has so many links and connections to the Dragon Empire. Maybe if you would like to create your own creatures and come up with your own original ideas of different monsters, maybe you would consider this optional, but the ideas here, the content is just so great and so creative. All of the artists and designers gave it their all. They went beyond. They went the extra mile, or several miles beyond, the way that they take classical monsters and gave them their own alien or weird spin. And how this book features so many hellish creatures, some on the Lovecraftian side of things as well. Some of them, a few of them could feel somewhat comedic, like this coin zombie, even though it's quite a dangerous zombie and has that power of drawing people to it. They still, that means you have a variety of ways in which you can use each of these monsters. It fits any type of campaign that you are imagining. So this is not just a bestiary, this is also a source book of ideas to create adventures and campaigns. You have story seeds, you have everything that you need to create campaigns pretty much for a lifetime. The content is just so powerful. However, you have to be mindful of the 13th Age monthly content. As I was telling you, some of that content is present here, some of it is expanded. A few entries, like the Frog Folk, for example, had a few things lacking, or a few things missing. So if you already, for example, have the PDFs of the 13th Age Monthly, you should still get this book because you're going to have all of those entries in one single place. And if you haven't purchased any of the 13th Age Monthly supplements, then get this book first. I would recommend it, so that you can see if you're satisfied with the content concerning all of those different themes, like the Chroma Dragonics and the Frog Folk and the Waking Stones, and then you could decide if you actually want those other supplements. I also recommend that you get it as a physical book because the book is just so beautiful. The 13th Age books are probably the highest in quality when it comes to role-playing game books. Maybe I haven't purchased some other books, and this is excluding those like limited edition books that come like leather bound and such. Those are in a different category, but when it comes to the standard book, the 13th Age books are just flawless physically. They are just so beautiful, the glossy paper, the hardcover. You definitely need to get this as a physical book, but if you like PDFs, I don't think you will be disappointed either. So my highest recommendation for Lions and Tigers and Owlbears, the 13th Age Bestiary 2. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.